name is Jordan Jenkins, and today I will be assessing human development in Mexico. More specifically, I will examine reasons of poverty in Mexico. What I hope you get from my presentation is that I hope you will visually see accurate reasons of poverty-driven areas in the Mexico region. I strongly believe that our media heavily distorts this topic and does not accurately articulate reasons of poverty and heavy immigration to the United States. It's easy for us to sit at our house on our couch and watch an episode of Border Wars and yell at the TV to deport these illegal immigrants, when in reality, we don't know their circumstances. The media in the United States prevents us from empathizing with these individuals from Mexico. I hope my presentation will aid in your understanding of what individuals from Mexico suffer through, and I hope that one day, as a country, the United States will not be so preoccupied at slandering these innocent individuals and actually help the country back on its feet. So, my first graph here, I found this data set on the Google public data sets that is made available, whether pertaining to different countries, energy sources, etc. And I found this one to be relevant to my topic. It is the GDP per capita in Mexico. You can see it is examining Mexico's GDP, which means the gross domestic product rate. And as depicted in the graph, the country has been increasing in the output of GDP. And that's a positive sign. You can see that around the mid-1990s is when there was an influx, and actually recently, within 2009, that we have been seeing a little decrease in that GDP. But overall, a good influx. And that's a good sign, but let's see if the GNI, meaning the gross net income, and the poverty rates actually correlate with this graph to show an increase in income in Mexico. Okay, so this graph I also found on the Google public data sets that is made available, and it is the population living below US dollars, $1.25 per day in Mexico. And unfortunately, this measurement is measured in millions. So as the graph depicts to us that between the early 2000s, between 2006, there was a decrease in the poverty rates, but most recently, between 2006 and the present, we have been increasing again. So as our graph shows us previously, the GDP does not correlate to poverty rates in Mexico. So maybe a reason is that, yes, although there's many GDP products being produced in Mexico and exported, but that does not necessarily mean that these individuals are receiving, the fair amount of work that they should receive for income. And so we should start examining other reasons of poverty. We know that the GDP is not a reason for this graph, so let's further examine that situation. Okay. So this next graph, I also found this one on Google public data sets, and the website's very useful to providing us this information that we can't always easily access. So this graph is the mean years of schooling of adults that they receive in Mexico, and it is a very positive sign that over the past couple of decades, it has been slowly influxing in the rate, but as you can see present day, the average number of years, this is total average in Mexico, that the average of years of schooling per individual is approximately 8.5 years. And if you think about that, they have this similar education system as here in the United States, elementary, middle school, high school, and college. 8.5 years is completing middle school and maybe half a year of your first year in high school. So this definitely correlates to the poverty reasons. Perhaps these individuals aren't receiving enough education to better themselves in the workforce, and reasons why they're not receiving high income. So in my previous that I presented to you was a graph of the average mean of years that individuals receive of schooling in Mexico, and I found that data set on Google public data sets, and I converted it to a graph to present that information to you. Here, I wanted to confirm that that information was accurate, so I conducted a random survey in which individuals from different cities in Mexico submitted their information on how many years they actually received the schooling. And as you can see in my survey, that the most number of years was 9, and the previous data set for the one that was presented to us was the average was 8.5. So once you look through this survey, you can see that the average is around 8 years, and it looks like the best educated city is Veracruz and then Durango, and the lowest education city is our Mexico City, Guadalajara. So this survey was just conducted recently, and it kind of confirms that our previous data set presented to us by Google was accurate. The information that is presented here is a web scraper I found online, and it is very beneficial to the topic we're dealing with because it examines and represents the different areas of poverty-driven reasons in Mexico. So, for example, we've already looked at schooling, and you can see that schooling was right here. And next, I'm going to examine another specific topic that is represented in this data, and that is agriculture. And you can see fertilization, crops, etc., etc. And we're going to take a look at that. I have used facets and filters and split my data to make it more available to you. Here I use facets and filters to split my data we were just looking at to focus on agriculture. And from our data, it looks like in fact, it's doing quite well. As you can see, the permanence of cropland has actually been increasing over the years, and the amount of attainable land for agriculture is also increasing. So this actually also correlates with our GDP, gross domestic product, data that we examined earlier. It looks like that Mexico is actually thriving in these areas pertaining to agriculture, productions of crop, and whatever else means for income. So that is a good sign that the poverty is not affecting this area in Mexico. This next data set, I also found it on Google Public Data, and it represents the number of homicides that have occurred and where in Mexico. My purpose of integrating this data set was to see if there's a correlation between homicides and poverty. I will next conduct a random selection data with this data, in which I will program through Spreadsheet Mapper 3.0. I will then open that data set through Google Earth, and we will be able to visually see the areas where homicides occur, and if those areas are actually the most impoverished locations in Mexico. And we will also integrate the poorest education systems as well. Okay, so this is the Google Earth visualization of the homicides data that we were looking at. I did a random selection and I converted the data into a spreadsheet mapper 3.0 and then uploaded it here through Google Earth. And let's take a look and see what we're finding. It shows that the homicides or crime reports that were that occurred the most were around the Mexico City region and also around Durango over here. Juan and Carlos, they were in the Chihuahua area. Felipe is close to Guadalajara, and Tia is just sort of an outlier out here. And if we correlate this back to the data set of schooling and poverty, we can see that the crime rates and the homicides actually correlate to that data that we examined earlier. Mexico City and Durango, if you recall, had the lowest education systems, and they were mostly living under the $1.25 per day compared to Chihuahua, especially Guadalajara. That's more of it's a higher economic area, and this just really confirms that the poverty areas, the places that aren't, receiving the attention for education systems, have the highest crime rates in Mexico. From everything we've examined, we can pinpoint that a major reason of poverty in Mexico was the education systems. Those systems that were the lowest were in the most impoverished areas in Mexico. Those areas were also responsible for the highest crime rates, especially pertaining to the homicides. I hope from my presentation you have a better understanding of the horrific situations in Mexico. And I also hope the next time you watch a show like Border Wars, you empathize with the immigrants and understand the conditions they've gone through in their country. Instead of slandering and judging them on television, we should help them in their country by aiding and bettering the education systems for a better future in Mexico.